Now, welcome to another Let's Talk Some Star Wars, where this time we'll be taking a look at and discussing the results of the poll that asked, what have you thought of the third season of The Bad Batch so far? And as usual, I'll be doing that by reading and responding to some of the comments that have been left on the poll. And so, getting right to it, we'll see that 49% of people who voted in this poll, or basically half of them, said they haven't been watching Season 3 of The Bad Batch. There were then 25% of people, or almost half of those who are watching it, that said it's been fantastic thus far. Another 20%, or nearly 40% of those who are watching it, said it's been pretty good, which left 5%, or roughly 10% of those who are watching it, to say it's been okay or average, and then a final 1%, or maybe around 2% of people watching it, who said it's been pretty bad. Alright, and before moving on to the comments, I just need to once again say thank you to everyone who votes, comments, or watches these or any of my videos across both the channels. It is all greatly appreciated. Also, a big thank you to those who support what I try to do here over on Patreon. Thank you so much to all of you who support me over there. And now let's once again kick it off with the top rated comment, which came to us from CMD, who simply said, 44% of subs to a Star Wars fan page not even bothering to watch Season 3 of a fairly beloved show is damning for Disney. And technically, as you saw a few moments ago, that number or percentage ended up at 49%, or very nearly half of everyone who voted said they were not watching The Bad Batch, which actually shouldn't be too surprising given the fact I did a poll a few weeks back now, and nearly half of those who responded in that poll said they were pretty much done or completely done with Star Wars in general, and that matches very closely with the results for Bad Batch here. And don't get me wrong, that is still not good. It is without question a reflection on the troubled state of Star Wars here in the Disney era. It is not good that 50% of Star Wars fans who partake in a poll like this, and I'm guessing, or I'm assuming that anyone who votes in these polls, who gets them in their feed, probably a Star Wars fan, right? Or at least were at one point. Either way, it is sad that half of them seem to have no interest in what Disney or Lucasfilm is doing with the franchise these days. Nevertheless, there is a sort of silver lining or a bright spot here for The Bad Batch in these sad numbers, you could say, which is that this isn't so much a condemnation on The Bad Batch as much as it's just a condemnation on Disney Star Wars in general, I think. Which isn't to say that every Star Wars fan still on board with Disney is watching and loving The Bad Batch. I certainly don't think, just given what I've seen on social media, or should I say what I haven't seen on social media about this show, I don't think it's making too many waves. I don't see it trending very often, if pretty much ever. I really don't think a ton of people are watching it, and if they are, they're really not talking about it that much. But I do think those who are watching it, for the most part, are very much enjoying this third season. I mean, yeah, obviously, if we just look at that poll and we remove the 49% not watching it, what's left tells us that everybody who is watching it is really enjoying it. Nearly half said it was fantastic, another 40% said it's pretty good. And I do agree, it's been an excellent season. It's sad that so few people do seem to be watching it when it's one of the best things Star Wars we've gotten in a while. But anyway, let's now move on to this comment from Caleb Lee, who said, I've loved this season so far, and I am sad that it's ending after this one, but I'll cherish what we've got since Disney has been so hit and miss with their shows lately. And despite the fact that I enjoyed the first two seasons, they have some not so great episodes mixed in with some really good episodes. And the fact that I have really enjoyed Season 3, I think pretty much every episode has been a hit. But I'm not sad that it's ending after this season, and I say that because at least it's being allowed to end how it wants to end. It's not one of those cases where it goes multiple seasons, suddenly it gets canceled, and then you have to try to wrap up all these story threads you've left dangling for seasons. Plus, I don't know how much more you really do with this show. I do think the premise has kind of run its course, if you will. Again, that's not to say it's bad or I'm getting tired of it, but I think it's reached its natural conclusion here, or I hope it will by the end of the season, you know what I mean. But yeah, it's been a great show. I think 3 seasons is going to feel about perfect when it's all said and done, or again, I hope it will. And though, yeah, I'll miss it, I'm not really sad it's ending, and I look forward to whatever they come up with next on the animation front. Alright, our next comment then comes to us from Credo the Gamer, who said, minus all the Palpatine clone stuff, it's been a really solid season. And I'm really trying to not let the all roads lead to the sequels thing bother me, and instead just enjoy this show for what it is. And it's been a really good, enjoyable show. It's unfortunate in a way that they feel the need to justify or lead up to the sequels or to explain how Palpatine somehow returned. And at the same time, I'm not surprised they're trying to justify the sequels, or however you want to put it. For better or worse, I don't see them ever retconning them, especially not if we do indeed get the Rey movie, which, as I've said before, I think Kathleen Kennedy will find a way to make that happen. I know a lot of people are hoping it is canceled. It never sees the light of day. It never hits theaters. I unfortunately, because I'm not a huge fan of Rey or the idea of carrying on from the sequels, but I unfortunately think that movie is going to happen, and that yes, we will see other shows, maybe not so directly like this one, but we'll certainly see other shows, and The Mandalorian has done it a bit as well, but we'll see them try to justify the sequels or explain how all roads lead to Palpatine returning. Okay, and moving on now, we have this comment from Dustin Harrelson, who said, "Visually, I'd say it's by far the best. It feels like someone watched Andor and was like, hey, let's do that, but animated, especially the first arc on Tantus." And I do tend to agree with you. I think that first story arc, the first 3 episodes, were very well done. They were very well paced, especially in comparison to the one-off episodes, if you will. The ones that, well, the Bad Batch, they go on a mission, something bad happens, and they figure it all out in 22 minutes or less, like they're delivering a pizza. And I'm not saying those episodes are always bad, I'm just saying they can be very formulaic, and for better or worse, people expect or want, I think, not necessarily even expect, but they want a show to be more serialized these days, especially a show like this. They want things to matter when they watch it, instead of just sitting down and enjoying it for what it is in the moment. That is just something that has changed over the years. You can go back in time, and the shows of the 80s, the 90s, even the early 2000s tend to be very episodic. Now, after shows like Game of Thrones, Breaking Bad, Walking Dead, just to name a few, people expect more serialized shows. That's just what they prefer nowadays. Alright, and our next comment then comes to us from JT295, who said, "It's the best one so far, almost so good that I keep forgetting about the whole Ventress thing." And yeah, I am very curious to see how they will handle the return of Ventress. I don't think it's going to be a flashback, as some suggest. I think Ventress is going to be used a lot more going forward. I don't think you bring her back just to put her in an episode or 2 of The Bad Batch and then to do nothing else with her. A lot of people love Ventress. A lot of people never read Dark Disciple, where she perishes, of course. And so I think they're going to try to, as they say, they're going to try to honor that book somehow or not retcon it. I don't know how you do that short of, yes, bringing her back from the dead. But I think she's being brought back because they feel like she's a character people want more from. They have a story idea with her. And I am not going to be surprised at all, as I've predicted before, if the next animated show involves her somehow. If she is maybe even a sort of main character, along with, my guess would be, a Crosshair and an Omega. Now, what that show would look like and exactly be about, I have no idea. But that feels like what they're setting up right now. Could be wrong. We'll have to see. And now let's get to this comment from Rylan Korma, who said, "I love how the girl who's the key to everything just tells everyone what to do and they do it." And I certainly get why people would find this annoying, because no doubt about it, there are times Omega comes up with a plan, or she says, "I want to go on the super dangerous mission," and the rest of them are like, "Sure, child, you can come on the dangerous mission and potentially die." But a couple things to keep in mind. First and foremost, I do think the show is more intended for children than adults. That's not to say more children watch it than adults. I think this is probably watched by mainly the generation that grew up with the Clone Wars. Either way, it is meant to be a sort of jumping on point for young people, so of course the child character is going to be prominent and do things that kids can or want to relate to or live vicariously through, if you will. Also keep in mind that she is technically older than her brothers, even if she does appear to be much younger. And I think what it really boils down to is the rest of the Bad Batch, they see her as part of the team and as kind of this child that they have to protect. There's this kind of this gray area or thin line between the two. And I do agree that it can feel jarring, because part of the show is Hunter trying to protect Omega, or now Crosshair trying to protect Omega, and they keep dragging her across the galaxy into dangerous situations. And so you have this weird kind of father figure thing going on at the same time as you have them seeing her as a team member and bringing her along on dangerous missions. And sometimes it just feels very conflicting, for sure. Alright, and let's do one more comment, and it comes to us from Richard Lahan, who said, "I can't relate to cartoons." And short of all the people who have checked out of Disney Star Wars just overall who don't watch it anymore. This is certainly the biggest issue or problem a show like The Bad Batch faces. There are those who simply will not watch it, either because they feel like cartoons are for children, or they just can't get into it. I know I've talked about it before, but I have tried over the years to convince so many people I know who are big Star Wars fans. I've tried to convince them to watch the Clone Wars, and they simply will not do it. Or they'll watch an episode or two and they'll come back to me and be like, nah, I just can't. There's just something about it I don't like. And I don't know what that is exactly. I think it's just, as I was kind of talking about, I think it's the stigma around cartoons. I think there are people out there who just automatically say these are for children, adults should not be watching it, when really it's just a different form of storytelling. It just happens to be drawn or animated or computer generated entirely, however you want to look at how they make cartoons these days. But it's really just a different form of storytelling, and that's what I try to tell people, to stay open-minded, give it a chance. But unfortunately, many who I try to get to watch things like the Clone Wars simply will not really give it a fair shake. And so here we are in a world where a show like The Bad Batch, in its third excellent season, does feel like it's being a bit underappreciated. Well, that's going to be all I got for this time. So now it is your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you think of Season 3 of The Bad Batch. Are you loving it? Are you hating it? Are you not watching it? Whatever the case may be, leave those comments below. Let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.